Hello, everyone. There we go. I need a. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is fun. Not really good at public speaking. This is my first time without doing it on Teams. So, welcome to the fourth quarter Leadership Live. Today we have a special guest, which is no other than Scott. And so, bring him aboard. And Jay, we're good to go to the next slide.
Okay.
And everybody who's watching on Teams and joining virtual, hey, this is going to be a new little setup we're doing for this quarter, or for this month. You still watch it on YouTube, we'll upload it, so if anybody misses it, just let them know that it's on there. And if you're here in office watching it from your desk, I encourage you guys to come sit with us and join us. And after we follow this, we'll follow with Wheelo Wednesday. So, Scott, this is the great Scott. He's got a resume of accomplishments, and one big one is Helmwise, which I'm sure you guys already saw a lot of the marketing, a lot of the effort that we have put out there on LinkedIn. So, there, Scott, just kind of go into the art of dedication or delegating.
Correct.
Jay, I'll pick it up from here.
Okay.
So before I get into that, we always start out with our Rosewood why, right? So as it's listed here, our why is to multiply, come on, the blessings and opportunities that have been placed into our trust. All right? It's very important that we understand what our why is, because that aligns us in everything that we do. How we act, how we behave, and most importantly, how we treat each other and our customers. We've gone through Leadership Live now for 3 quarters. This is obviously the first event of the final quarter of the year, Q4, and we're going to be talking about the art of delegation today. But before I get into that, I want to thank Dr. Fubara and the complete staff of Campbell University for being our partners in Leadership Live. I appreciate them giving me the opportunity to present this session today to all of you, but we couldn't really advance the Leadership Live without the help of our Campbell University family. So I want to thank Dr. Fubara and that particular team. So, the art of delegation. Does anyone guess why I didn't call it the science of delegation? This will be interactive today, since we have a live audience. Anyone, why do you think delegation is an art and not a science? Bryson, what do you think?
Requires some foundational knowledge of what can be delegated.
Okay.
Which is gained through experience and or trial and error.
Trial and error. Okay. There's one big key word I'm looking for, or aspect. Excuse me?
Finesse.
Finesse? Well, let me put it this way. So my undergraduate is in electrical engineering. So I love me some process. Really? You know, ones and zeros, as black and white as it can be, the better I feel as an engineer. But any time that we add a human to the equation, it goes away from being a science and now becomes an art. And so delegation is all about the interaction with others, and especially when it comes to getting things done. And so because we have that interaction, it has to be an art. There is no way that I'm going to be able to put up things up here today, a checklist of items that is going to work perfectly in every single situation, because every person is different. Therefore, even though the processes and the tools and the techniques that I mentioned today will give a little bit of a science-ish feel to it, it really is an art. So we're going to talk about the art of delegation. This is what we're going to talk about today in 4 pieces. Traditionally, we always start with, a definition. But not only am I going to start with a definition, shortly thereafter, I'm going to talk about what delegation is not. I'm going to contrast it between what it is and what it is not, because there is a lot of confusion around the word delegation. And we'll talk about that. The second piece here is, why would we delegate? There must be a benefit to it. Some people say WIFM. Have you ever heard the acronym or the abbreviation WIFM? What's in it for me? Right? So we've got to find the benefits from an individual standpoint and the benefits from an organizational standpoint, and we'll talk about some win-wins on both sides of that equation. Third piece, why don't we do it? If there are benefits to it individually and collectively and organizationally, why don't we do it? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with kind of the what, the who, and the how. Kind of a practical application on if you want to go out and to delegate and you want to do it well, how do you do it? Who do you delegate to? And what do you delegate to them? So let's get started with the definition. What is delegation? For those who can see it online here in the room, you'll see a picture of someone handing off a car key. Or it looks more like a house key here, but let's say it's a set of car keys. And when you think back to when you learned how to drive, and then the things that were delegated to you when you now had that skill, it serves as a good understanding of the concept of delegation. Because when you first got your driver's license, I'm sure your parents or whoever taught you how to drive or whoever's vehicle you were driving, if it weren't your own, didn't suddenly say, go out and take the most precious thing that I have and put it in your back seat and go off and have fun, right? There was an area of earning trust. And that's what we got to think about when we talk about delegation. Because the true definition of delegation is the process of entrusting a task or responsibility to another team member. Okay, another team member. But think about teams. This isn't necessarily, and I'll talk about it here a little bit later on, necessarily a top down to someone. There are opportunities for you to work with the team and delegate laterally. In some cases, in very select cases, maybe even delegate upwards. We'll talk about that. But this part about entrusting is a key part of delegation. And we'll see it a little bit later on and reasons why we don't delegate. Because it's the trust piece, right? You've got to actually feel confident that the person that you're handing the task over to will deliver, will be reliable, will be dependable. And so trust is an important aspect of delegation. And so here, the thing about delegation, it's not merely just giving work away, right? That's not what delegation is. Because of that trust component, it's actually making sure and feeling comfortable that the person you hand the task to will actually deliver it to standard, deliver it to quality, deliver it on time, etc. Right? So it's not just, here, go take care of this. There's more to it than just doing that, and you'll see that in the following slides. Secondly, it's the empowerment and trusting others. I've hit this many times, and you're going to hear it many more times throughout this. Because if you don't understand that delegation and trust go hand in hand, then you probably were sleeping during this particular presentation. Okay? And then finally, it's leveraging the skills of others to accomplish a goal. You should not delegate something unless it is leading to something bigger, greater, a goal, an accomplishment, a next step, a milestone, whatever the case may be. Because if it isn't leading you forward, why in the world are you doing it to start with? Right? So delegation always should be leading towards a goal. The reason that you are delegating up, delegating down, or delegating laterally is because you need help in accomplishing a goal. You need more firepower, you need more resource, you need more knowledge, you need more diverse thought in order to accomplish your goals. And so the key is delegation always associated with a goal. So trust and goal are the two pieces that go along with delegation. So if that is what delegation is, what is it not? Well, number one, it's not abdicating responsibility. When you delegate a task or responsibility, you don't suddenly just walk away and throw your hands up and say, you got it. No. Ownership cannot be delegated. Responsibility can be delegated, but the ownership, the true responsibility to deliver something, lies with the person who was given the task and owns the task to start with. So do not think when you delegate something that you now can just say, hey, I've got to get our jail-free card. No way, right? Abdication of responsibility is not part of delegation. Secondly, it's not micromanaging. Do not delegate something and then every 5 minutes going, you get that done yet? Get that done yet? Hey, can you do it this way? Can you change this font? Can you add this color? Can you make this bullet? That's not delegation, that's micromanagement, right? And we'll talk about the responsibility piece of this and who to delegate to a little bit later on. And then finally, it's not limited to top down. I mentioned this earlier, right? We tend to think that we delegate things down to someone. You've got a boss who's delegating it down to a direct report, right? Or you're a parent delegating it down to your children. You will find that when you're looking at the things that you want to accomplish, you got to actually look at that in context of your skill set, and you may need the firepower and skill set of people above you to get the task done. So there may be a very select circumstances where you actually delegate up. And that comes through that collaboration and coordination with that top level leader. So, what are the benefits? 4 key benefits. There's probably more. So as I start to put these up, right now, I want you to take just maybe 10 seconds, think about, if I were thinking about delegation, why would I do it? What would be a benefit to me or a benefit to the organization? And if what you're writing down or what you're thinking of is not in these 4 that I'm about to bring up, let me know. We'll see whether or not there's actually a 5th, 6th, and 7th to this particular list of benefits. The first one is higher efficiency. What do we mean by that? Well, if I need to get things done and I'm only one person and I need to get a lot of things done quickly, the more people who can lend a hand, the better I can get things done. Okay? It's much more efficient. Simon Sinek would say, by the way, Simon Sinek's books are over here as well. Simon Sinek would say, the more that you hand off to someone, the less you have to do. Right? So if everyone does a little, no one person has to do a lot. Right? So it has to be much more efficient. Right? Divide and conquer. You've heard that saying. Right? So one of the benefits of delegation is the fact you can be much more efficient because you're using all of the resources at your disposal, not just one. You're not just putting all your eggs in one basket. The second one is team growth. Right? Because when you delegate, you actually are educating others. You're empowering others, as I mentioned earlier in the slide. You're now building more people with more capabilities because they now have the experience through the delegation of the task that you've given them or the responsibility. And when they complete that to the appropriate standard, you now get a person who's much more efficient and effective in what they do. Therefore, the team collectively grows. So it's not just you getting more things done, it's actually the team is able to get more things done. So that's a benefit of delegation. The third is focus. Especially for the person who is delegating the responsibility or task. Because if that person has delegated the responsibility and task, and it's done through trust and empowerment, then that person can focus on higher priority items, right? Things that they are only uniquely qualified to do. And then because of that, therefore, that focus brings greater emphasis and greater progress towards the overall goal, while others are getting some of the smaller things done. And then finally, increases trust. There is nothing that is going to increase trust more than you handing off something very important to you to someone else and that person delivering, whether that's down, lateral, or up. If that product gets delivered, if that goal gets achieved, if that responsibility gets met, if that task gets accomplished to the quality and timeliness that you expected, you are naturally going to start trusting that person. Chandler has said this 1,000 times. Trust is something that's built drop by drop, but you spend it by the bucket full. And what you're doing when you delegate tasks is you're putting drops in the bucket. And the more drops that go in the bucket, the more full it becomes, the more the trust increases, the more you can delegate, the more efficiency, the more effectiveness, the more focus, and trust continues to build. So lots of benefits. So those are 4 key benefits up here. Does anyone write down or think of something that's not part of these 4? Nothing. What we got?
Quality.
Quality. Well, I would say quality is great. You're right. For me, that comes through higher efficiency, team growth. It's in there. So it's inherent. So I would add a 5th for quality, but I also probably would layer it through the other 3. But it is an important aspect because the quality piece is really where the trust comes in. It's not delivered to quality, you're not going to trust. Right? And if you're not doing it at quality, you can't be efficient because you're spending more time fixing the things that you delegate. Right? So it's incorporated in there, but it's a very important aspect. So thanks for bringing it up. Anything else?
It was in the focus, but urgency.
Urgency. Yes. Urgency comes with efficiency. It comes with focus and also comes with trust. Right? If something is urgent and you need to deal with it and you've got other things that are distracting you and you can delegate, increase trust. Helps with the focus and urgency as well. Thanks, Bryson. Well done. All right, let's move on. So we know what delegation is. We know what delegation is not. And we know some benefits to delegation. So the next question is, well, then why don't we do it? I said to Chandler this morning, It's pretty ironic that I'm up here talking about delegation and I'm one of the people who don't delegate very much, right? But this is also part of the learning. This is all about getting better, right? So, why don't we delegate? A couple of reasons. Well, the first, you probably heard this. It takes too long to teach someone. Where did I hear that recently? Right? But it isn't. Think about it. In order to get someone up to speed to do something like you would do it, it's going to take your investment in time, right? Because you want to be able to make sure that you can trust that person, right? So we generally don't do it because we don't have the time. We don't have the time to develop people. I don't have time to tell you how to do this task, so we don't delegate. Second reason, nobody can do the task as well as I can, right? No one is as good as I am, right? We don't do it because we're afraid of the quality piece of it, right? Hey, if I'm going to be judged, if this particular task is going to be seen by the CEO, well, I want it to be at a higher quality. It's a representation of me, right? So I want to ensure that I do it the best I can. And as it says here, no one can do it as well as I can, so I won't delegate. Third reason, they like doing the task, right? They just might enjoy doing what they're doing. And why in the world would I give it away? This is what I look forward to and doing every single day. Sure, Melissa comes in and says, hey, I get to play with, scheduling stuff today. There's no way in the world I'm delegating any of this. I'm going to pick up that phone call and call that person in the field, right? But my point is that we tend to not delegate things because we enjoy them, right? We must, again, people are involved in the equation, thus the art versus science. And then finally, they can't risk losing control. So if you look at these four things, they tend to fall in two categories. The first is you don't have the right people to delegate to. Because if you did, you would delegate. If you had trained people in advance, you would have a person to delegate to, right? If they delivered a quality product, then you would delegate them to. So the chances is you don't have the right people to delegate to, or at least not yet. The second piece of this, you choose not to. You can delegate. You have that thing that you like doing. You have a choice to delegate it, but you choose not to. So a lot of times we get frustrated that I got too much to do. First place you need to look is in the mirror. Say, well, how much of the things that am I doing am I handing off? How many of the things am I delegating? Okay? So two categories those fall into. The lack of trust, or you're a control freak. Right? And this control freak thing is a very real thing for a very real reason. One of Chandler's favorite sayings is, control what you can control. You've all heard that before? Right? Well, what's the one thing that you can control better than anything else? Right? Control what you can control. I can control me. I know that product's going to be produced at the right quality. I know I'm going to deliver it on time. Right? I know it's going to be a good representation of me and my team. So you hold on to control and you don't delegate. And then you wonder why you're burning the midnight oil, right? Not getting enough sleep. That sort of thing. All right. So we now know why we don't delegate. So the next question, so we put this up here. There's a book down here, it's at the bottom shelf, and it's called Who, Not How, written by a gentleman called Dan Sullivan. Get the opportunity to read that book, I suggest it, because it is all about finding the right people to delegate to. But he has a quote in here that says, if you're going to apply higher levels of teamwork in your life, you'll need to relinquish control over how things get done. You need to relinquish control on how things can get done. Delegate the what. Don't delegate the how. Because as soon as you start delegating the how, you're now micromanaging. Right? It's not delegation. Who, not how, make sure that you relinquish control on how it gets done. So, what do we delegate? So we've seen some great benefits, right? We know why we don't do it, so we say, all right, I'm going to break those chains of taking a chance to trust someone, or I'm going to be bold enough to lose control a little bit. or at least have the perception I'm going to lose control a little bit. So the question is, what would I delegate? There was a book written by Stephen R. Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, it's over here in the library. By the way, 99.9% of what I'm talking about is over here in their library. All right? Big plug. And if you don't know, before you all arrived here in the Hive, Meredith and the marketing team refreshed our library with 50 new books. Good stuff. Very good stuff. Stuff from Lencioni, Maxwell, Collins, Sinek. A lot of great authors you hear us talking about. Great information. Jocko Willing, that sort of thing. All right, so what we delegate. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen R. Covey mentioned something called time management matrix. Now, some of you may have seen this before. The time management matrix, this, kind of a 2x2 matrix. If Houston's listening, he loves 2x2 matrices. All of you in ProVantage probably understand that. But we have these 4 quadrants here. And when we look across the top piece of this, across this x-axis if you're engineering oriented, or just the horizontal axis if you're not, we've got 2 continuums, 2 bookends. Urgent, and then you can probably guess not urgent. All right, so that's your horizontal x-axis. And then vertically, we bookend it with what are things that are not important versus things that are important. Now, when we talk about important and not important, from the perspective of the person who has the task or responsibility to delegate, it's not saying that the thing that they're delegating isn't important, but from their perspective on where they should be spending their time, this item is less important than something else. All right, so as I go through some of these examples that fall into these quadrants, I want you to understand that. Again, going back to art, not science, right? I'm going to throw some things up here, and I'm sure there's probably 2 or 3 of you are going to argue, or could argue, that shouldn't be there. That should be in another quadrant, all right? Art, not science. Concepts, understand how to apply them, and then go forward with the specificity to make it happen. All right, so we got our matrix here, and what Covey did is he labeled them 1 through 4. 4 quadrants, okay? So we're going to start in quadrant 1. Good place to start at the beginning. All right, so what are the types of things that are urgent and important? Well, how about a crisis, right? We have a big storm. Water is coming into the building. We got a crisis, all right? It's urgent and important to us, right? Especially when it's a brand new building, right? A crisis is going to be something that is important and urgent. Again, to the person who's responsible for that. Another example would be material problems. If you're around me long enough, you'll hear me use this word material quite a bit. Because there are things that are immaterial versus things that are material. And really, if you want to think about it, sort of the crossover point, one side of the fence or the other is, if I knew this information, would it change the decision I previously made? So if I had more information about what I was about to do, would it change the decision I made? Those are material things, all right? So material problems, things that, hey, these are really going to affect the business. This is really going to affect my team. This is going to affect finances. This is going to affect the customer. These are material things, right? You want to make sure those are in your quadrant 1, urgent, important activities. Another one, project deadlines. There's probably some PMs like there going, yeah, project deadlines. But why would it be urgent and important? Well, first of all, if you're doing a project, I would hope that it's important. If you're doing a project that's not important, shame on you. Wasting time, effort, energy, and money. Okay? So the project, by its nature, should be important. And it's urgent because why would you put a deadline if you didn't have to meet it? Right? Just for fun of it? Just to make people's life miserable? Just to see how long you can go without sleep? No. So the fact that it's actually a project makes it important. The fact that you've got a deadline makes it urgent to hit the deadline. Because it's probably dependent on a lot of things. The business needs it because it's got to be in place to deliver a new capability. Or it's a dependent task. If I don't get this thing done, the next thing can't start. And now we're creating a whole series of events or a chain of events. All right? So let's go to quadrant 2. Something that's important but not urgent. Prevention. We love firefighting, but maybe we ought to spend more time in fire prevention. And by the nature of prevention, says that it is not urgent because we're working in it in a very proactive way. So anything you do from a preventive standpoint is a quadrant 2 activity. Another thing, relationship building. If you got to build a relationship immediately, you're in some trouble. All right, think about dating. All right, you got to build that relationship and get them to, a potential proposal. Maybe it is urgent, maybe it's important, I don't know. But the bottom line is you want to make this important but not urgent. So spend the time in relationships with customers, with your fellow employees, etc. And then a final one here is new opportunities and planning. Those are the things that you want. You want to be spending your time working on those new opportunities and making plans in place, putting plans in place so you're not creating fires. Quadrant 3 activities, interruptions. Again, important, not important from the perspective of the person who has the task or is being asked, in this particular case, the interruption. So if I'm working on a very important spreadsheet and someone walks in my office, that's an interruption. It's urgent because I got to deal with the person who just walked in my office. It may not be important because they may be asking about, I don't know, where the coffee machine is, right? So interruptions by their nature, usually, especially if it's not a crisis or material problem, they're probably going to fall in quadrant 3. Down here, meetings, and I got a question mark. Yeah, Kelly's kind of smirking a little bit, right? Meetings, urgent, but not important. Remember, from the perspective of the person who may want to delegate, do I need to be in that meeting? It's not saying the meeting is not important, but does that person need to be in the meeting? So if the answer is no, then it becomes an unimportant task to them. If the answer was yes, it'd probably move up in one of the other quadrants, right? So think about meetings, who you invite to a meeting, right? Make sure the right people in the right room. And then you got tasks. You're like, wait a minute, I thought we were going to delegate tasks. How is it down here in quadrant 3? Well, what type of task? Right? If I'm Chandler and someone is asking me to, I don't know, schedule a meeting, right? That's an important task, right? But for Chandler, it's not. Give that to an EA and have them schedule that. It's the meeting itself that's important to him, not the scheduling of the meeting that is most important. So, just some examples. Finally, quadrant 4, we'll go pretty quickly here. Busy work. I think everyone can understand that, right? Not urgent, not important. Scrolling. If you're at your desk, scrolling the internet, checking on the latest and greatest, maybe it's Facebook, Instagram, some of these other social media things, right? Most likely it's not urgent, not important. And then finally, I got email with a question mark. What do you think about email falling in quadrant 4? Not urgent, not important. The dreaded CC email, right? I tell a lot of people who I work with, if you put me as CC on an email, expect it not to be read. Right? Because if it was important, I'd be in the to field. You put me in that CC field, automatically it falls into not important, and because it's a CC, it doesn't mean immediate action, take action, guess what? It's not urgent for me either. So think about that in your emails, we're putting those together, and who you're putting in CC, and who you're putting in to. I wouldn't get into blind carbon copy. I'll get into that. So, if we look at this 4-quadrant matrix, where do you think you should spend most of your time? Which quadrant? 2. Exactly right. Quadrant 2 activity. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about that. Is this a quadrant 2 activity? Are you working in quadrant 2? How much time are you spending in quadrant 2? Listen to any leadership podcast, you'll hear this reference to quadrant 2. So now you know what they're talking about, right? It comes from this time management matrix from Stephen Covey. Well, there's also something called the Eisenhower matrix, named after our president, Dwight D. Eisenhower. And what Dwight Eisenhower said It's this quote: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And so sometimes this 4x4 matrix is referred to as the Eisenhower matrix. I think, Kathy, you introduced it as that as well. And so everything stays the same, but when Eisenhower put things in these particular categories, he then assigned to them an action associated with it. And what I mean by that, if he found something that was in quadrant 1, he did it. It was important and it was urgent to him. So he did it. He did the task. He took care of the responsibility. If it fell in quadrant 2, he scheduled it. Right? It was important to him. It wasn't urgent. I'm going to put it on my schedule, make sure it gets done. Things down in quadrant 3 are the things that he delegates. And you're like, wait a minute. Why in the world would you delegate not important stuff? Well, it's not important to you, but it's important that it get done overall. It's urgent. Needs to get done quickly. So those are things that become candidates for delegation. Again, not a perfect science, more of an art. So what falls in each of these quadrants, you're going to have to discern a little bit. And then finally, things that fell in quadrant 4, what do you think the action is going to be? Exactly right, Kelly. Delete. Eliminate. Don't spend any time on them. Right? So you'll see this referred to as the Eisenhower matrix. Now, another way of figuring out what to delegate, because that's simply a tool that you have at your disposal to figure out what you should delegate, right? It's a way to put things in categories and say, okay, things are in quadrant 3, maybe I should consider, like Eisenhower, delegating those to someone else. Well, if that doesn't work for you, here's a different technique. You can actually do a little bit of work analysis. So as you start doing things, start thinking to yourself, are you good at what you're doing, and do you love what you are doing? All right? That's one little category or list that you should probably capture. The second, I should actually, for these sort of things, what you're going to find out, these are the things that you are uniquely qualified to. Anyone heard of Working Genius? I know Matt and some of the EMT. If you haven't heard it, there's a book over here called The 6 Types of Working Genius, done by Patrick Lencioni. But what it is, it's an assessment. And what it does is identifies what your natural working geniuses are. What your working competencies are, what your working frustrations. But working geniuses are things that give you energy, that you're naturally good at. They allow you to use your God-given talents. So these things would be things that you're doing within your genius. Second item here, what are the things that you're working on that you are bad at and that you hate? And believe me, all of us have some of those things. Right? Maybe they came as some sort of requirement in the position, or maybe it was a legacy task or responsibility that we used to do that we should no longer do, but we keep on doing it. Right? You're not good at it, it's not in your genius, and you also hate doing it. Third one, usually what happens there, and the reason you hate it is because you lack the experience to get it done. Here, what are things that you're good at but you don't love? Think about that. Are there things that you are good at but you don't love? You know, for me, PowerPoint may be a good one. Probably surprising to Meredith, but I'm very good at producing PowerPoints, builds, and those sort of things. I don't necessarily, love it, but I'm good at it. All right? Then over here, those are usually repetitive tasks. What you're good at, but you like. These are usually where people are trying to grow their capabilities. Think about learning a new skill, trying to play an instrument, learning a new sport, right? You're not very good at it, you're bad at it actually, but you like doing it. Right? So those are things that usually are probably going to be time consuming. You're going to spend more time practicing, more time trying to get the task right because you're not good at it. So that becomes another category. And then finally, this category here, what are the things that you're working on that others need to learn? This is where we start exponentially increasing the capabilities and the capacity of our organization. We start going, hey, I've got this skill, and it would be really good if others had this skill. Right? PowerPoint again. Maybe there should be others who should try to help learn how to do PowerPoint. It'd make them more effective, it'd make me more effective, make marketing more effective, all those sort of things. All right? So those things here are usually development opportunities. So what we see here is those things that you're good at and that you love, probably things you should hold on to. They're your natural genius. You probably don't want to delegate those things. Here are things that you bad and you hate, definitely get rid of those. All right? Delegate those. This one here, you're good at it, but you don't love it. Do you delegate it or do you retain it? Don't know. Hold on to that thought. Here, you're bad, but you like it. No, you're bad at it. It's inefficient. It's not effective. It's not good for the organization. Delegate it. And then finally, these things. You should delegate things that people need to learn. That's how you develop people. That's how the team gets better. That's how you build capability. All right? But here, this one here, what you're good at but don't love, again, this is where the art comes in. Maybe I retain it because I'm good at it. Maybe I delegate it because I don't love it. And if it's draining me, over time, I'm really going to hate it. It's going to affect my attitude. I'm going to be a disgruntled person living in the CXO office, right? You don't want that. So you may want to choose to delegate some of those things. Now, if this doesn't work for you, one final technique, it's called the love and loathe list. This came out of a brand new book by Marcus Buckingham, and it is not over here. All right, it's called Love and Work, what it's called. And what he talked about is make a list of the things that you love and the things that you loathe. And he recommended that for a week, you have a piece of paper on one side, you have things that you love, other side, things that you loathe. And usually, something that would fall on the love side are those things that you look forward to, and when you're doing them, time flies by. That goes on your love side. On the loathe side, things that drain you, right? Or time just seems to come to a standstill, right? Because guess what? The things that you probably should delegate probably are going to be on that loathe list. Things that you're going to want to not delegate because it brings you joy and happiness are going to be on the love side of the house. Unless you're down here and you want to start developing people. Now that actually is a sacrifice because you're going to give up something you love to do for the benefit of someone else. All right. We now know what to delegate going through our process. Question is now, who do we delegate to? Time, good. Some characteristics. First one, delegate to someone who shows character and competency. Now the book here, actually I think Ryan has it checked out. It's called by Stephen M.R. Covey. I mentioned Stephen Covey earlier. His son, Stephen M.R. Covey, wrote a book called Seed of Trust. And in Seed of Trust, he defines trust as two pieces, character and competency. Who you are and what you know. That's what builds trust. So if you're looking to delegate to someone, delegate to those who experienced and demonstrated their character and have a competency, because you're going to trust them. Next, delegate to someone who has a willingness to accept more responsibility. Think about it. Do you want to give a task to somebody who doesn't want it? That's going to be a game of hot potato. They're going to give it to you, you're going to give it to them, they're going to give it back to you, maybe they hand it to somebody else, and then they're back to you, going around and around. Find those people who want to grow, people who want more responsibility. Find that person and delegate to. Find a person who has a positive demeanor. Delegation, especially early on, is going to come with frustration. Find someone who has the mindset to say, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to stay positive. I'm learning this for a reason. You know, it's worth my time. It's worth my energy. I'm going to be better for it. All those good things. If you're somebody who's just negative from the minute you give them a task, you're going to spend a lot of time micromanaging because they're not going to get it done. Find someone who models consistency, right? Someone who is reliable and dependable. You know and have seen time and time again that they are going to be there and they're going to deliver, right? That consistency is important because character and competency is important to trust, but if you don't do it consistently, then trust starts to get eroded. You start filling the bucket of trust and have to rebuild it with some more drops. So find someone who models consistency. Someone who's low touch. Someone who doesn't require someone to be checked up on all the time. Someone you can hand it, set it, and forget it. Right? It's going to be delivered on time. I'll check in on it. It's going to be working out well. So find those low touch individuals. Find those who are mature enough to know their limitations. Right? They got some humbleness to them. You give them a task, they get into it a little bit, and they start getting a little bit beyond their capabilities. Right? They know what they can and cannot do. They know that you've instilled this, you have this special trust and confidence in them, and they're willing to come back and let you know that it's a little bit beyond that. Because it goes into knowing when to ask for help. Right? Knowing when to ask for help. And the final one, courageous enough to bring the bad news. All right? You want to find someone that you give that task to and they screw it up, they're going to let you know. They're not going to deliver it. You give it to your boss or your boss's boss, and come to find out the numbers weren't backed up. Seen it happen. Not pretty. Okay? So what's interesting about these characteristics of a person to delegate to, as I was thinking about this and listening these out, sat back and looked at them, I went, wait a minute. I've seen these things before. Number one, show character and competency. Sounds like do the right thing to me. Next one, exhibit a willingness for greater responsibility. We before me. Right? Let me step up and help. Positive demeanor, gratitude, hope, and optimism. Heard that around here, especially at the EMT and RET. That's always been an important aspect. Model consistency, spirit of excellence. Right? Touch, innovate to elevate. Think about that. I don't need to get involved. That person's going to come up with creative ways to keep the project moving forward, to deliver on time, deliver at the right quality. Know your limitations, self-awareness. We talk a lot about this. Know when to ask for help. Be humble. Characteristic we talk a lot about here, those are family companies. And finally, courageous enough to ask for the bad news, transparent accountability. Does anyone know, without looking at the wall, what value transparent accountability is part of the definition of? Do the right thing. Exactly right. So it comes back up here, right to the top. Right? Character and competency. If you have character, integrity is part of character. Right? So when you're down there, courageous enough to bring the bad news. Very important. So I thought it was interesting that when I looked at this, that these are all the things we talk about here at Rosewood. So by nature, if we live our values, if we believe in our values, every single person in this organization should be someone that we trust and that we can delegate to. Down, potentially up, and laterally, horizontally. Think about that. We live our values and believe in the things that we talk about here, everyone should be trustworthy. Everyone should be able to be delegated to. And if that is indeed true, what is the potential of this family of companies? We talked about the benefits, increase efficiency, focus, and quality as it was brought up. Very important. All right. So we now know who to delegate to. How do we delegate? Last 3 slides. Okay. How to delegate. Well, important characteristic here. When you're delegating to someone, you have to ensure that they have the requisite skills and experience. Because how you delegate to a person who is experienced and what you're delegating to them is different than what you would delegate to someone who is not as experienced. So in other words, if a person has the capability and the capacity to handle the thing you're about to delegate, this is the recommended sequence of events. Number 1, alert them. And what we mean by that is let them know that you're going to delegate to them. Don't just pop it on them on a Friday afternoon and walk out. Right? Let them know. Alert them. What if they push back? You wouldn't want to know if they're going to push back. You want to know here at step 1, not down at step 7. Right? If there's some pushback, now is the time to figure it out. But you only can figure it out in advance of it becoming a problem if you've given the person the courtesy, respected them, going back to our values, enough to let them know that you're going to be delegated to. Now, once you let them know that you're going to delegate to them, then you define what you're going to give to this individual. All right? we want to tell them why the task is important. Right? Why the task is important. Think back to the Eisenhower matrix. Important, not important. May help if they know that this is important and why it's important. Right? So you want to define that in terms of why it's important. Then you want to explain why that person was chosen. Why me? Friday afternoon, you're giving me this task. You told me on Thursday you may need my help. Right? Give me this task. Well, why'd you choose me? Why not Johnny or Sally? Why me? You owe it to that person to let them know why you chose them and not someone else. And here, it's important that if you indeed have chosen someone and you stay true to the principles that we've been talking about, it's because you have faith and trust in that person. So believe it or not, when someone delegates something to you, it should be something that you hold as an honor. There's a prestige to it. Right? Wait a minute. Someone has chosen and entrusting me with a task or a responsibility. Damn, I'm good. All right? It's important you see it that way. Because if, remember going back to what the definition of delegation and what it wasn't, it's not just handing off work. No, these are important things. These are tasks and responsibilities that are going to benefit you or the organization, and let them know. Let them know that they're trusting you as a steward. They're entrusting you with this very important thing to deliver. So see it as an honor, not as a burden. Next step, tell them. Right? Tell them how this task, going back into letting them know why it's important, how this task helps us accomplish our mission. Whether it's a team mission, whether it's a mission of Rosewood, and more importantly, and how it helps them on their journey and their career goals. I'm delegating to you because I'm trying to instill you with some more leadership capabilities, some strategy elements that make you more valuable in the future. Think about that. If someone gave me something that said, hey, this is not only good for the mission, it's good for you and your career, I'm in, right? But we've got to, the person who is delegating things to someone, you got to let the person know that information. Then you want to inform. You want to inform them that you are committed to making them successful. It's not fire and forget. It's not micromanagement, but it's not fire and forget. You're going to be there to offer them support and guidance, coaching. Right? You're setting them up for success, and you're lowering their fear of failure. And then most importantly, here, number 6, remember to allow grace along the way. People are going to make mistakes. When we talk about don't tell them how, give them the what, not the how. Right? So allow them to a little bit of flexibility or a little bit of maneuverability to do things slightly different than you would. Grant them grace. And then coach. Make them successful, provide them support. Right? Empower them. So, we talked about how to delegate in those 6, 7-step process when we're talking about someone who has capability and capacity. What person doesn't? We talked before that one of the things we want to do through delegation is develop our team, develop skills. Right? It's part of the way in which we empower one another and grow as an organization. But if they don't have the requisite skills and experience, here's what you do. Do the task and have them watch you. Right? Have them watch you. How's this supposed to be done? Demonstrate what good looks like. Okay? Let the team member during that period of time ask questions. Right? Why are you doing that? Why do you do that step first versus that step first? Right? This is again showing a dialogue and helping that person prepare to be delegated to in the future. Number 2, once you have done that, then do the task and ask them to help you. So before they were just observing. Now you're doing the task and they're doing pieces with you. They're doing a piece of that equation. They're solving, filling in that spreadsheet, filling out that form. Gives them more experience. Third step in the process, the team member does the task and you actually coach them. right? You help them along the way. Fourth step, team member does the task and you observe them, right? So now we're kind of switching the roles. You started doing the task with no help, you got a little bit of help, they started doing it, you started helping them, and now you're observing them. You've now made that transition over to them, right? And making sure that we get that done. And then here, once they have demonstrated that, they've observed, you've observed them, and you're confident that they've got the task to the right level of quality, then they can do it alone, but you want to check in periodically. Don't leave them on an island, him or her on the island, right? You want to check in periodically. So trust but verify is what Ronald Reagan used to say. And then this is a sixth step that I always add. If you've delegated something to someone, let others know that you delegated it to them. Because with that comes a certain level of authority to get that task done. And your team might not know why this person is asking these questions about this task or responsibility, because you never knew. You thought, well, why are you asking that? My manager's not asking that. Let them know that you delegated it, so they now know that they have the authority and your support to get it done. Right? Now, if you read Maxwell, some of the books over here, or you read Dave Ramsey. Anyone know Dave Ramsey? Heard that name before? He's a kind of a financial guru, wrote EntreLeadership, Financial Makeover, that sort of thing. They talk about in these steps. Model, mentor, monitor, motivate, master. And then I add, make it known. But more importantly, what John Maxwell will say, the most important part about why you delegate is this final step, multiply. The more you delegate, and you do it in this particular way, and you ensure they have the skills and the abilities to be successful, you're now multiplying the capabilities of the team, capabilities of the organization. And that's what a leader does. Leader's job is to multiply. All right, here's a summary. Last slide. Delegation process of entrusting a task or responsibility to another team member. There are multiple benefits. We know that we have to identify what we want to delegate using those different processes, whether it's a time management matrix, whether it's the Eisenhower matrix, whether it's a love and loathe list, whether it's doing your work analysis. And then let go and find and develop trustworthy teammates, right? Start building that team, and most importantly, properly delegate the task. I mean, go through those sequence of steps. They have the capabilities, alert, right on down through to communicating, or they don't have the capabilities, going through the steps we just talked about by observing them to do the task, and you providing them support. So that is the art of delegation. Most of these references are right over here in the library, but this is what I use to bring that together. And so I want to thank you for your attention today. And coming soon, meaning next month, accountability and problem solving. Questions? Stacey.
So you talked about why we don't delegate and why there's trust and control. How do you think that lack of setting expectations works into the decision to delegate?
Expectations with the person you're delegating to?
Yeah, so you talked about setting them up for success and making sure that, so it takes preparation to define what you're looking for when you delegate something.
Correct.
So like
Correct.
The piece you kind of talked about is like, I don't want to train them, but what about you just communicating effectively what the expectation is of what you are delegating?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that in any particular task or responsibility you want to delegate, the more that you can define it, the better. So we talk a lot about job descriptions or even role descriptions. You've maybe heard the word RACI, or responsible, accountable, consulting, and informing. Anything you can do to try to set those expectations ahead of time is going to speed delegation. But if you haven't done that, that's why you got to go through that step of informing and defining. Because you got to let them know what those expectations are up front. But if you don't, what's going to happen is they're going to deliver based on their perception and not on reality, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to say, I knew that. I knew I should have given it to him. No one can do it as well as I can. When in reality, it wasn't the person who delivered the task, it was your inability to properly define and set the right expectation.
And I feel like that also leads to micromanaging as well.
Yes, absolutely correct. Yeah, as you know, I'm big on expectations. You know, what does good look like? Right? Don't let me guess. Other questions? Yes.
When you're talking about how to delegate,
Mhm.
like making the list and the chart,
Yep.
it sounded like it took a lot of introspection about
Yes, it
looking at your
does.
tasks and looking at the calendar and what it is that you're doing. When do you do that?
Right now. Here's an easier way to do it.
Sorry,
You
it's not
come-
really the problem.
Yes. So come in a little bit, Anna Claire. What Anna Claire said that we talked about coming up with a list of things to potentially delegate, right? And find out things that you're frustrated with. And she goes, when do you start doing that? My answer was right now. Because, and as Anna Claire said, and she was 100% correct, it takes introspection. You come in the morning, you sit down, you turn on your computer. If you go, I really don't want to do what I'm about to do, love and loathe list right there. Right? Why don't I want to do that? Right? Is it because I'm not good at it? Maybe it's something that should be delegated. Maybe I don't know how to do it. I was never trained. Maybe I need to make that known. Right? Or you come in and you can't wait. You can't go through the login screen fast enough to get to whatever the task is. Creating a spreadsheet space. Right? Then you're like, hey, I'm not going to delegate that. Unless Stacy may be the best at building a spreadsheet. But if she is the only one who's good at building a spreadsheet, and she doesn't develop others to be able to delegate to, she will do nothing but spreadsheets. So my answer to you is do it right now. Do it through that feeling on what's frustrating you and what you enjoy. Figure out what things are time consuming. Why are they time consuming? Are they on the important, not important list? Right? And if it's not important, here's a great example. We all produce reports. You produce a report and no one looks at it. Is that important? Is it urgent? One of the things I used to do, and I'm not advocating that here, is a bunch of reports, I'd stop sending them out and see who would ask, where's the report? And often, not a single ask. All right? Because it was just part of the DNA. It was always done. And in many cases, it was handed down generation after generation. They did it this way 10 years ago. The new person came in the role, was told the producer's report. The next person, next person, next person. No one ever asked, is this important? Is this urgent? What category does it fall into? What quadrant? Yeah. Any other questions? Shannon, final words before I...
Yeah, comment on the reports. So one carve out. Make sure it's not a CYA or a CYB is probably a better way.
Yes, yes.
To cover your butt report. So I know that we do a lot of reports we don't use up until the client or someone calls and pitches a fit.
Right.
So what you really don't want to do is pull a Scott and then
Don't send it, and then they go,
3
what's
months
the
later I
report?
call and say, hey, I need that report because the client called pitching a fit. And you go, well, nobody looked for it. I didn't bother to do it.
You take that trust bucket and you just pour it out
And
on
went
the
on, you
ground.
go, okay, you're out.
Just take it over a 50-gallon drum and go over the floor.
A couple other ones. When would you call it partnering or joint venturing or possibly even handing off as opposed to a delegation does kind of give you that top-down feeling of, occasionally joint venture, I assume, is a little closer when you're trying to train up someone.
Yeah.
We're going to work this together.
Well, I see partnering as is delegating to me, right? Because if indeed I am partnering with someone, that person's sharing the load, that one person does a little, does a lot, so one person does a little, everyone does a little, no one person does a lot, then that's what it means. Because now I'm spreading my capabilities. So it is delegating, right? But we may use a different word, we may use the word partnering, but in reality, you're building trust. And you're building consistency, you're building capability, and you're building capacity, all of those sort of things. So to me, it's all a byproduct delegation.
And then a little bit on those lines, one of the other benefits is certainly diversity of thought. So you may not even, your answer to the question may not come from the right perspective. So bringing someone on board helps a lot with that. But also say with your love and loathing, I would consider also trading. so that's something with your
Yeah.
supervisor, or certainly laterally, you can discuss, make sure the supervisor knows, because you still have responsibility. So if you trade, then you do need to shift responsibilities, so you better make sure everyone involved understands that, hey, this is something I hate doing, and I'm not that good at it. Maybe that should go over to Jay instead of Antonio, or vice versa, so that's a little bit different. On the ways to build the trust or be a good person to delegate to, if you've heard me talk, the bottom of that list that he had up earlier, certainly know your limitations, know when to ask for help, courageous enough to own a mistake. We hire you because you're great. We hire you because you follow our values. We expect you to do a good job. Best way to help a lot of leadership here is, I know that if I give you something out of your wheelhouse, or that you're getting behind or under the water, you're going to speak up. Because otherwise, if you're silent, I assume you're fine. And then if you don't speak up, we won't know until it blows up. And so I've always told people, think of it this way if you don't want to be courageous. If it blows up and you tell us early, it's just a problem in here. We are a family company. It's a problem at the office or within your teams. If you wait and it blows up, now it still blew up, and the client or whoever was waiting on it now has a problem too. So now you just doubled your problem. So realize, even if you don't have the courage, they didn't know, like, one times problem, not a two times problem.
Right.
And so, we're already going to have to fix it. We're already going to have to address it. We're going to make, the changes. And if we can save the relationship, save the deliverable, the other side doesn't even know what we went through. It's the same amount of work, and you still came away with a win. Otherwise, you lose twice. So that's a big one for me. But thank you, Scott. I certainly appreciate you leading this one and sharing with us. We have a great person here, a great resource. Knock on Scott's door quite a bit. He does have the bazillion certifications and tons of experience Antonio had up there, and he loves to enable people to succeed. So I think you should tap that resource, and he has read all those books plus about 500 more. So any business book you have, and you have a question or need a reference, Scott's your man. So thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it, Chandler. Thank you all. All right, Antonio, what we got?
That's the session.
That's Live in the Hive.
That's Live in the
We're
Hive.
all finding members of Live in the Hive.
Yep, and that will go out tomorrow. Me and Jay, Meredith, the marketing team is going to put out an email. Basically, all the leadership lives we're in October, so there are 2 left. So if you're missing any, please reach out. They're all on YouTube. You can rewatch them. Submit the last question. There's only 1 question. Please submit that question, the answer, and we'll give you guys credit. And then at the end of the year, like I said, you'll end up getting a certificate from this leadership live session, as well as prizes and pins. So. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
One more thing. So I got a $25 Amazon gift card in my pocket. Who considers themselves very astute in our Rosewood values? Anyone? Anyone? Come on, give me someone. Someone who thinks they know Rosewood. I'll put it that way. All right. All right, Sherry. It's very, very, very easy. Recite to me the Rosewood why. I know, but our values come from the why.
I always get on this stage, always.
Come close.
You know it. Doing the best you can every day, working with others with respect.
Now, what's our why? It was the very first slide that I covered.
I know.
During the presentation.
Our why is everything we do, and nobody needs our why for it. So I don't know that.
All right, who has it? Raise your hand.
What if you know, like, a few?
What is it?
To multiply your blessings, and I don't remember the last 4.
No, not enough. Anyone? $25 gift card. Yes, what do you got, Josh?
Multiply our blessings and opportunities. Better our trust. Close. One key word. I've been listening for this word. I changed it on Antonio's slide. Want to try it one more time? There's only one word off. Multiply the blessings and opportunities that have been placed into our trust. I'll give it to you now.
we go.
Literally pays to pay attention.
Exactly.
Thank you guys, and look out for that email. And thank you guys for joining the first live session of Leadership Live here at the office. So, first ado, we get into WeLo Wednesday.
All right.
Should we go in the call there?